Hello and welcome. I'm Mr. Luis, and in today's psychology class, we're exploring one of the most fascinating studies in social cognition, Baron-Cohen et al., 2001, better known as the eyes test. This core study investigates theory of mind and how individuals with autism spectrum disorders, including Asperger Syndrome, perform in recognizing emotions just by looking at the eyes. Let's break it down step by step. The study focuses on theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have different thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. This is often linked to empathy, our capacity to appreciate someone else's emotional state. According to Baron-Cohen, individuals with Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, especially high-functioning autism or Asperger's, often struggle with social functioning and have an underdeveloped theory of mind. The original Reading the Mind in the Eyes test was developed in 1997. Participants were shown black and white photos of just the eye region and had to choose the correct emotional state being expressed. However, there were issues. Only 2 answer choices were given, some items were too easy, and there was a ceiling effect, which means that scores were too high to show variation. In response, the test was revised in 2001 to improve validity. Baron-Cohen and his team set out to improve the original eyes test, and with that they had 4 specific aims. First, they wanted to test whether adults with ASD would score significantly lower than adults without ASD on the revised version of the test. Since the eyes test measures one's ability to recognize emotional expressions from minimal visual cues, this would reflect the predicted theory of mind deficits in autistic individuals. Second, the researchers aimed to see if those with ASD would also score higher on the Autism Spectrum Quotient, AQ, a questionnaire developed to quantify autistic traits in adults. Third, the team wanted to investigate whether there were notable gender differences in eyes test performance among the general population based on the idea that females tend to perform better on tasks involving empathy and emotional recognition. Finally, the researchers wanted to see whether a negative correlation existed between AQ scores and eyes test performance, meaning that the more autistic traits a person has, the worse they would perform on the eyes test. The study was conducted under controlled conditions, making it a laboratory experiment. However, it's classified as a quasi-experiment because participants could not be randomly assigned to conditions. Think about it. Researchers couldn't just assign someone to have autism. They had to work with pre-existing groups. This lack of random assignment is a key reason it's considered quasi rather than a true experiment. The study used an independent measures design, meaning that each participant only took part in one group, either as part of the ASD group or one of the comparison groups. The independent variable in this study was the type of participant, which had 4 levels. Group 1 included participants with ASD or high-functioning autism. Group 2 consisted of adults from the general population. Group 3 was made up of university students, and Group 4 was a comparison group that was matched in age and IQ to Group 1. The dependent variable was their score on the revised eyes test. That score reflected how accurately they could identify emotions just by looking at images of eyes. This setup allowed researchers to compare performance across groups and evaluate whether autistic traits had a measurable impact on emotional recognition. The participants were divided into 4 groups. Group 1 consisted of 15 adult males with either high-functioning autism or Asperger Syndrome. Their average age was 29.7 years, and their mean IQ was 115. Group 2 included 122 adults from the general population with a much wider age range and an average age of 46.5. Group 3 had 103 undergraduate students, mostly from Cambridge University, with an average age of 20.8. Finally, Group 4 was a tightly controlled group of 14 individuals matched to Group 1 for age and IQ, with an average age of 28 and IQ of 116. Participants in Group 1 were recruited via advertisements in the National Autistic Society magazine and through support groups for individuals with autism. Each participant was shown 36 photographs, each displaying only the eye region of a person's face. For every image, they were given 4 emotion words to choose from. Only one of them was correct. This made the test more challenging and reduced the chances of getting answers right by guessing, as the original version only offered 2 choices. Before taking the test, participants were given a glossary with definitions of each of the possible words. They were allowed to consult this glossary at any time during the test. In addition to the eyes test, participants also completed other tasks. Group 1, the ASD group, was asked to complete a gender recognition task to ensure that poor performance wasn't due to poor visual discrimination. All groups except Group 2 also completed the AQ questionnaire to measure autistic traits. The results clearly supported the researchers' predictions. On the eyes test, Group 1, the ASD group, scored an average of 21.9 out of 36. In comparison, Group 2 scored 26.2, Group 3 scored 28.0, and Group 4 scored the highest with an average of 30.9. These differences were statistically significant, showing that people with ASD did in fact perform worse on recognizing emotions from the eyes. When it came to AQ scores, Group 1 had the highest average at 34.4, while Group 3 scored 18.3 and Group 4 scored 18.9. Importantly, a significant negative correlation was found between AQ scores and eyes test scores, REs 0.53, meaning the more autistic traits a person had, the worse they performed on the eyes test. However, there was no correlation between IQ and eyes test performance, which means that lower scores in the ASD group weren't due to differences in intelligence. The researchers concluded that the revised eyes test was a valid and sensitive measure of subtle impairments in social intelligence and theory of mind. The fact that the ASD group consistently scored lower, even when matched on IQ with a control group, suggested that their difficulties were not due to intelligence but rather due to genuine impairments in social cognition. Additionally, the strong correlation between higher AQ scores and lower eyes test scores provided further evidence linking autistic traits with challenges in recognizing emotional expressions. The test also supported previous findings that females tend to score slightly higher than males on emotion recognition tasks. This study had several strengths. It was conducted in a controlled environment with standardized procedures, improving its internal validity. The glossary helped ensure participants understood the emotion words, and increasing the number of response options to 4 reduced the likelihood of guessing correctly by chance. However, there were also some limitations. The sample size for the ASD group was small, with only 15 participants, which affects the generalizability of the findings. The use of static black and white photos of eyes might not reflect how people interpret emotions in real life, reducing ecological validity. And since it was a quasi-experiment, there was no random allocation of participants, limiting control over participant variables. This study touches on several key debates in psychology. It highlights individual differences, showing that people differ in cognitive empathy and social cognition. It also relates to the usefulness debate because the eyes test may help support early diagnosis and better interventions for people on the spectrum. Ethically, the study followed proper guidelines with informed consent, confidentiality, and no deception. That wraps up Baron-Cohen et al. 2001 and the eyes test. It's an essential study that helps us understand how autism can affect emotional recognition and empathy. When revising, always tie your answers back to key concepts like theory of mind, quasi-experiment, and correlation. Thanks for joining me, and see you in the next psychology class.